Okay, in this episode, we take a deep dive into me and my history and what it means to be a C as a salesperson. I think we cover a lot. There's some key points to think about is when you're dealing with C's, you have to understand that they're fact-based and they've got their own process. So be aware of that. Also understand if you are a C that people buy for their own reasons. We talk a lot about that and how I've struggled to wrap my head around that at times. And there's a lot more. Follow us on social media. I hope you really enjoy the episode. If you get any value, please share it with someone also in sales. Thanks a lot.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. In the D corner, we have Clint the Cleaver Bigelow. In the I corner, we have Al the Gambler Daniel. In the S corner, we have Nan the Promoter Foreman. In the C corner, we have John Small Mountain Hill. Let's get ready to throw down!
All right, guys, this is episode number 5. This is going to be my favorite episode, maybe ever, because it's all about me.
Me too.
Right
Actually,
on.
Excited.
That makes me incredibly uncomfortable.
We
So,
love him so much.
Well, we can't wait for this.
I know.
This is
I'm
cool.
going to get grilled, so this is going to be awesome.
Oh, you are, yes. We're true.
Well, to stop you in midstream,
Oh, Lord.
dude, you're
Alright.
looking
Okay.
amazing
We
today.
love the way you look.
I appreciate
Look
it.
at this. Look at
So
this.
dapper, I guess.
If you guys can see this on camera, hopefully you guys are tuning into the YouTube. John came dressed for success, man. This is awesome.
This is literally what I wear pretty much every day.
But can you see your shoes? They match your shirt.
No, that's all right.
You
We're
took
gonna-
bicycle wear to a whole new level.
Yeah.
That's good.
I'm going to
That's
go
good.
on a trail ride.
Awesome. All right, let's get on topic because
Sure.
I'm tired of talking
Oh,
about my
okay.
clothing.
Look at you.
So if this is your first episode,
He's a
you've not
C.
been here before.
Duh.
That's exactly right. We're here talking about personalities and how they impact our success in sales. And we break it into 4 quadrants. If you're familiar with DISC, then you already know this, but D, I, S, and C. There's 2 axes there. The vertical axis, one side of that, D's and I's are going to be very gut-driven. S's and C's are fact-driven. And the other horizontal axis puts D's and C's on the same page, which makes us very task-driven. And I's and S's are very people and team-driven. So I am going to be up in that pretty far left-hand corner, task-driven and fact-driven. So we're going to talk about, I guess, my history. I will answer some questions. I actually brought my DISC assessment from the most recent time I took it. Talk about
course
some
you
of my
did.
strengths. Of course I did. I'm always prepared. And yeah, we'll go ahead and go. So I'm going to let you guys ask me questions because I'm always asking questions.
So where does that lie in the disc spectrum? Where's your current one at?
I'm a C with some S.
Okay.
And,
Because we always have a secondary letter that
Absolutely.
we slide to, right? So you slide to an S.
and then my perceived need for work is to be like Al, to be an off-the-chart I.
Wow.
So
Tough
yeah.
slide.
Surprising.
Surprising. Well, because
Well-
being the face of a company, I feel like I've got to be out there and promoting and networking and everything else.
When I say surprising, because from a social sense, I know you slide that way.
Mhm.
But when you say that in business, that's the route that you feel like you need to go. Yeah. How is that a conflict for you ever?
You know what's really weird is as I get older, I realize it a little bit more because it used to be on the
Older
weekends.
means 20.
No, yeah, I wish. When I was younger, and really even until this current move into my own thing, on the weekends I couldn't wait to get out and socialize, and I was always available to network and coffee and hang out with friends. And what I'm realizing now is that I get a little bit of burnout, right? Because I'm so social, I'm always trying to make myself available, networking, business development, all this other stuff. So on the weekends, it takes something pretty awesome for me to want to like get out of the house, right? I become kind of this homebody because it's me recharging my batteries, which is not anything that's ever really happened before. So
John, let's take a little step back here,
Yeah.
and let's talk about you professionally, where you came from, what you do now.
Okay.
Let's talk about your history a little bit because it's really important to this.
So I'm gonna say, as a ballpark, I've had more jobs than anyone here at this table.
Combined.
So, combined, for sure. I was in the Army. I came home. And then before the Army thought I was too good to wait tables. Army taught me that that was not true.
Thank you for
So,
your service
Of course.
and your service.
Truly.
So realized that I wasn't too good at it. Started to wait tables. Enjoyed it. realized I really liked socializing with people, trying to upsell, everything else. And then I moved into actual sales at in a call center. It wasn't really, it's more support with like an upsell on the end of it. And that was okay. And then I moved into phone sales, sold phones for AT&T and Sprint, and then got poached to go into banking. Worked in banking for a little bit.
When you say you got poached, what do you mean?
Someone came in, they were impressed with the experience of like working with me and my knowledge and everything else. And they came back in the next day and I was like, hey, is everything okay with the phone? They were like, yeah, everything's fine. I'd like to talk to you about a job. I'm open. What's the job? And they said I work for Chase. I was like, oh, let's talk about that. Banker's hours? Hell yeah, I'm down.
Look at you.
And left that because I was just kind of done with retail, if I'm being really, really honest. And banking was not the sweet spot that I thought it was going to be.
What turned you off about retail?
Mostly the hours, right?
You're working when everybody else is off work, right?
Well, that and more than anything else, it interfered with my training in martial arts, right? I'm a huge martial arts advocate. I've been training since 2004 in one art or another.
You haven't gotten very good at it.
That's true. I'm terrible. You should guys come try me.
Call him out, bitches. I got money says you won't win. Bring your wallet when you come.
And that's
He
how
can protect all of us.
that's how Al and I met. Actually, we met at a martial arts school and kind of became friends there.
I'm hardly as good as this man, so yeah.
And you're gonna just put a big old target on my back. Awesome.
Even seafood said you're amazing.
Oh, well, thank you. So it was more about interfering with that than it was anything else. Like I was fine working Saturdays and Sundays, but I just couldn't train as much as I wanted to, and that was the big burnout. So I moved to banking. It was okay. It was in the middle of, if you've worked for Chase, then you're familiar with the concept of work in the lobby, which is just essentially pouncing on anyone who walked in the door. Yeah. And
so not much different than AT&T, Sprint type of thing. Kind of people come in the door, you got to react
for sure.
Figure out what's going on, what they want, what their needs are.
And it's very formulaic, right? It's really interesting because you assume that you've got good sales training and sales savvy, but you really don't. It's just products and features and benefits, and like there's no real way to qualify people. There's no sales training. It's just product knowledge, which is what most people define as sales training these days, anyways. So worked for a couple banks, and then actually Al gave me a shot doing what he does, and did that for about 18 months. And then after that, got into a business with a partner doing websites, and did that for a couple of years. And
now, did you?
We can keep going down this path.
You met through martial arts, you and Al, and he. Did you guys have a conversation at all about sales, or how did that happen?
We originally had a conversation about backing him in the poker arena, which was a great experience. Yeah. John's a gambler, which I can always support that, right? And so, through Care to the Win, put support behind that. And I can tell you one of the things about John is John tells the truth, right? Win or lose, good or bad, right? He's just going to tell you, hey, this is what happened,
that's
right?
What
Which I love that.
Yeah. You ask, you tell. That's kind of a lost art these days, right? So you kind of beat around the bush a lot when people ask you questions. You don't want to answer them honestly. That's something that John, as a C, and his personality gravitates towards. You ask, I tell, because they're facts, right? You you like to speak in facts.
Oh, I love it. I love it so much.
And if you don't know the fact, you're very quick to back away from talking about it because all the research hasn't been done. You haven't come to a conclusion that you can give the best advice for somebody. That's really dynamic to what a C in the DISC personality is. Yeah,
I would agree. Whenever I worked for Al, it was my first shot in like a pure B2B realm. And
explain B2B.
Business to business versus business to consumer. Thank you for clarifying, because not everybody would know that automatically. And I struggled. Like, it was not easy. And part of it was my own fault because I asked Al about his experiences. And as we know, Al had been in medicine for a long time before he got into this realm. So my mileage was definitely different than Al's, because I said part of my qualifying to see if I wanted to go do this with Al was how long until you went to commission. I said 3 months. Like, okay, awesome. So at 5 months, when I don't have anybody even willing to have a conversation with me yet, I'm terrified I'm about to get fired, right? Just so nervous because I'm not performing and everything else. And then luckily there was another guy at the same school, and when I decided to leave Al, because I felt bad because I wasn't being successful and I was just kind of burnt out. I had a kind of bad experience with the doctor, and I decided that I would just rather go wait tables at 2 restaurants if necessary than continue to like plug away at this thing and not see success, which is also a C trait, right? Like we give up pretty easily in some instances. So
C in the DISC spectrum, the way we describe it, the C word stands for compliant.
Compliant for sure.
So when you're dealing with facts and you're dealing with a quick way to make money, right? If you're talking about the sales side, if that data isn't there to continue forward, I wouldn't say give up. I'd say you're quick to drop it and find something new.
For sure. Absolutely. Right. And that's part of the reason why I've had as many jobs as I've had, right? I mean, when you're waiting tables, it's really easy to move jobs and the grass is always greener, and I'm always looking for, ways to improve. And so that led to like a lot of job hopping in the restaurant industry. But after leaving Al, a friend of mine who kind of started me on this path was like, hey, I got this business. I'd like you to come in and help me run it. So we started a website design agency focusing in the affordable realm. Did that for 4 years. And then he moved to Seattle and just didn't really seem viable for the long term. So I left, and now I've got this thing I'm working on now.
But was it successful when you made that jump to the web design?
Was what successful? Me working for Al?
You personally? No.
To
the web design.
No, not at all. Honestly, I was when I was working for Al, when you work for Al and you work in this industry and you got to be in the OR, most of these surgeons want to start very, very early, like 4 or 5 a.m. sometimes. And so I would work all day with Al in Nanette, and then Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday morning I would go wait tables to kind of offset because daycare was expensive and my kid was young.
But when you got into the web design, because that's a pretty big leap, right? So you go from selling technology, cell phones, sort of. You go to the banking industry, which is a whole nother side of selling that me personally have a hard time understanding of what that entails. Then you go to work for Doc in the medical field, which is a crazy jump, right? Huge jump,
super crazy.
And we've talked about this quite a bit personally and a little bit on these past episodes. But then you go into a web design, and so there's another realm that you're probably not necessarily familiar with, but you're starting to pick up some of these details of how to sell to people, right? And that was that successful when you moved into the web design?
So if it wasn't for that and wasn't for my partner at that company, Jeff, I wouldn't be here, and I don't think Al and Annette would be here. Jeff is the guy who kind of put me on the path. I mean, before that, the idea of self-improvement in any other realm other than martial arts, in my opinion, was woo-woo bullshit, right? Like, this is nonsense.
Self-help books and
absolutely screw all of that, right? I've got it figured out, And whenever I started working with Jeff, and he was like, hey, you need to go take this DISC assessment. I was like, man, I don't need to go take a test to sell with you. And he was like, if you're not going to do this, we're done talking.
Wow.
Which is weird because
you have to identify who you are.
Absolutely. Jeff is as big of an eye, if not larger than Al, right? So for him to draw that line in the sand meant it was really important. And it was arguably one of the more validating points in my life because I'm not this outlier. I'm not this unique individual who only feels this way. There's a whole group of us that do it.
Yeah. Oh, and you talked about it on a prior episode. You were pretty surprised when you found out your DISC assessment.
Yeah, I thought I was an eye.
Which is very interesting.
Well, because I'm very social, right? And when we talk about C's in general, right, and we talk about engineers and accountants and things like that, I don't really fit that personality. But the thing to remember is that pressure comes into play in business and in selling and stuff like that.
We want to talk about the reason that you slide to a corner. We all slide to a certain corner is under those stressful obligations or those really interesting business conversations where you kind of get, so to speak, backed into a corner and you pick yourself naturally. That's what the 4 of us are, D, I, S, and C. Naturally, that's what happens. We can all sit here and talk about our social life and how we all get along. We can all play that game, but naturally, deep down, when we go to sleep at night, we slide to a certain corner. And for you, it's a C. It's compliant. It's data. It's facts.
Yeah.
Mine's generally the fetal position. But anyway.
It had to come out eventually.
So what's really interesting is Jeff thought that I was a D because he was only around me at the martial arts school, right? And a C.
Where you're a bad mofo.
Yeah, something along those lines. So when you're a C and you get to that point where you feel like you have like true mastery, it's really easy to come off as a D, right? Yeah. So in areas of my life where I feel like I know enough knowledge and I've done enough reps, you can't fucking touch me. Like I'm going to argue with you. I'm going to stand my ground, but I won't do that if I haven't done my version of the 10,000 hours to get to that point.
I can speak from the D corner of why I would guess that you're a D a lot of times is that you deal with, you make hard decisions, right? That's tough to do. You tell people what they want to hear. The difference, I think, between a high D and a high C is the fact that a D is willing to make that off the gut, right? He's willing to feel it. Let's go for it. And if I'm wrong, we'll move on. Whereas a C likes to analyze all that data to make that decision. You'll make the decision. You will always make a decision, but there's going to be some research. There's going to be some analysis done. Oh, yeah. There's going to be some research. And when you finally get there, you're going to make that really good decision. And 9 times out of 10, dealing with all these personalities, it's the most accurate. You may not like it. You may not like what you hear, but it's going to be pretty accurate stuff. Going back to why you like to have, if I had an accountant, that's the personality trait that I would want them to be, right? And it doesn't degrade anybody. That's truly saying that they're going to do their homework. They're going to get you the most bang for your buck. They're going to get you facts. Right. That's a really important.
You don't want your CPA to be.
So I have a CPA, and he's a lot like John. Yeah. I call him when I'm in a panic, and he tells me to calm the F down, right? Mm-hmm. Like Quentin Tarantino, I got this, right? It's who's coming from, East LA to help Daddy out, right? For sure. And so a lot of times a guy like me absolutely needs somebody like you, right? In the sense of the fact-based aspect of feet on the ground. This is how we're going to get this done. The algorithm that gets the job done. Mm-hmm. And believe me, from an I standpoint to a C, we reach across to each other, right? Which is not always the easiest slide.
Oh, no.
Right?
Not at all.
Right. Because but you laugh when you say that because there's still a connection between us, right?
For sure. Yeah.
Would you need each other?
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole premise of the whole thing.
Sure.
We all need each other.
100%.
You cannot run a business predicated on just this little D or an I. You have to have the whole dynamic. And if you don't, you're not going to be successful. You have to have the different personalities that bring strength to the table.
Well, I think I said it on the first episode, is that if you just look at my disc profile, like no one's going to hire me as a salesperson, like no one at all. And Jeff actually went against that advice and hired me because he was just going to try to offset his weaknesses, right? Sure. I mean, he had been in this world for a while. He's very familiar, and he had in the past only hired eyes, and talks about the fact that it was really fun when it was fun, but when it was tight or stressful, no one wanted to work.
How did you work your way out, right?
You have to.
So he took a shot, and we did that, and then he moved, and then I worked for a startup for a little while, which is kind of an interesting experience, and then got laid off and decided I wasn't going to do that again, and started my present company. So.
Well, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I have a consulting company called Adapted Growth, and what we do is we work with entrepreneurs, small teams, and nonprofits to help them give process and to use technology to actually track sales, right? A very C thing to do. Let's take this thing that most people don't want to track, and let's track it and treat it like a math problem, because that's essentially what we do. If you have enough data in your CRM, we can look at, are you wasting time? Are you dealing with the right prospect?
Where's your strengths? Where your weaknesses at? For me, I've talked about this on one of the podcasts. It was when I talk about hit ratios and I talk about wins, losses, who's my good customers, who my bad customers are, that directly reflects the business that you have. Without that data and somebody tracking all of that, you're just guessing, right?
Absolutely.
You think so. One of the facts that I want to say about what you do and your personality that works really well is that I have a hard time looking at a customer because I'm friendly with them and saying, okay, this is my great customer. I love this guy. I want to work with this guy. But if they're not making you money, right? If you're not making money with them or not doing a good job or you guys don't work together, that really shows up on a spreadsheet. That really shows up in data collection. And a lot of times people overlook that because, hey, we're friendly. We like to go to baseball games. We like to do these things together with our family. So, yeah, they're my best customer. But the fact is without the data that you produce in your company now and CRMs, it's a huge deal. We can name 20 different ways to do it. But without that data, you tend to get lost in feelings and people. And the fact is that when you're running a business and a successful one, you need data. You need hard data to prove those facts. That's where guys like you come in really handy.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to forecast, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months into the future, the way to go look at that, if you're going to take bets on your business about hiring or growing or scaling or anything else,
data.
You have to go look at your pipeline to see what's in there. Understanding that some of it's going to fall out and there's, variance and things happen. But if I know that I close 80% of things that once they're at that qualified state and I've got $1 million in that pipeline, I can make some pretty safe assumptions on my business about hiring and scaling and everything else. Yeah. But people don't do that. They just look at the lag, which is just money in the account.
Here's what we did last year, so next year will be better.
Right.
Yeah, let's add 10%.
Yeah, which is crazy.
It's ridiculous.
Not long term.
Doug had something to say.
Yeah. So when you sell, describe your selling technique. I mean, when you're out there throwing your pitch, what's that look like? Yeah. What's that look like, man? Give me the skinny.
I hope your answer is you don't do that.
True, right? I mean, if we're at the point to where we're pitching, I've qualified you. It makes sense, right?
Okay, back up.
How do you do
Poor
that?
choice of words.
Sure.
Describe to me your sales process. I use the word pitch.
You know, you did.
I was using my verbiage, not yours.
Right.
Go
ahead. It's more or less the same things that we all do, right? Do you have pain that I can solve, right? Because no one has a budget for what I do. No one is sitting around thinking, okay, we should really update our CRM or put some more, database measurements into that thing. Let's have a documented sales process. Let's hire a consultant.
Pay for another spreadsheet.
Well,
to be honest, pay for
that.
I went to lunch. I came back. I decided I was going to pay for another spreadsheet.
Yeah,
you're actually worse than if my toilet breaks. I don't have a budget for when my toilet breaks. Right? You're actually beyond that.
For sure.
Because it's not even a pain to most people. They don't even know that they have a pain.
Right.
Correct.
And you have to discover that.
Because most people take the churn and burn approach. Of like, oh, if this guy isn't working, fuck it. Get him out of here. We'll bring in the next one because salespeople are like easy to get. Yeah. What they're not really understanding is like how much time you invest in every person you have to train and bring in. And
agreed.
That loss of time you don't make
turnover is a crusher, man. And that is probably the most unrecognized aspect of business. When you lose an employee, how much time does it take you to retrain, rehire, and the distraction to everybody else in your process, right?
If you're not terrified by the prospect of hiring and it not going well, I question what other decisions you're making in your business.
And I'm an I agree. That is the kiss of death in particularly small to medium businesses, right? And I know guys who fire their entire staff once a year, and I'm like, you wonder why you can't buy the jet airplane, you fuck? I'm like, you just threw jet fuel and all the extras out the door when you had to go reestablish your entire process, which is what you do.
So you were talking earlier about this guy Jeff that took a chance on you.
Yeah.
One of the things that I commend him for that, and I know him a little bit, not much. One thing that I commend to anybody that's, like Doc said, going through this hiring process is, you may have all the right people on your team. You may have everybody that you need. You may not. But if you do, they may not be in the right positions. Understanding personalities and what they're good at, their strengths and their weakness. Putting them in the right positions to do what they like to do, what they'll do for you day in and day out to make you and your company and themselves successful is huge. DISC is one of those ways to really take a deep dive, especially in a sales position, to realize strength and weakness. For me, we could go about this all day on what I have that is good for the sales force, also that is weakness. You as a C shouldn't be a salesperson in traditional sales.
Oh,
right?
For sure.
So you were kind of touching on that earlier of, if somebody looked at my DISC personality and said, should we hire this guy as a salesperson? They'd say, no way. This guy's he likes data and facts. He likes to stay. Go ahead.
But let me hold you up there. But analytics sells, right? Sure.
I was going to say.
So if somebody walks in and says, do you know the metrics of your business? Do you know if you're going for a plane leaves New York going to Europe, right? Well, the data determines whether they land or not, right?
You don't want the you don't want the S, the kind person.
Well, you'd be in Antarctica,
hopes and dreams.
Yeah, you'd be on Greenland, right? I mean,
And you don't want the D who's gonna go, I'm gonna get us.
Yeah,
there.
we'll get there.
Or don't trust me, bro.
And if we don't, I'll swim it.
Or better yet,
we'll get there,
this
baby.
guy,
Don't worry.
okay, the D, you're swimming across the river and you realize you don't have enough energy to get there, right?
I'll drown
nobody's
all of
ever nobody's ever swam that far,
Or the
and
eye.
you're dying, right?
Get on my back. I'll get you there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Not
I
gonna
think
happen.
that everybody has to have in your organization a hard C, because otherwise
I wanna see,
you're just fishing,
Yeah.
right? You're literally out there with no rhyme or reason, doing what you think might work,
Right.
and 9 times out of 10 it doesn't.
I disagree. It becomes
Imagine
the issue,
that.
and I'll tell you why. Because we talked about that, like living in the country, that one
Oh, yeah.
mistake that kills you,
Sure, yeah.
right? John prevents you from that one
I agree.
mistake.
Or-
Because most of us fly by the seat of our
Sure.
pants, and we survive most of the
So
encounters.
the reference
but
is
we know people die on all of
the
these
grain.
events.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I could go into that story. I will say
It
that
was good.
there's complete federal departments like OSHA, for example. OSHA exists because of data. It only gets better because somebody's tracking data.
Because people die on the job,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Or
People get hurt.
businesses
People die.
fail, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So if because guys like me don't see failure, right? And D's sometimes don't see failure.
Well, I do. I just put it in the rearview mirror.
Exactly. And I go, oh my God, and then I find something else to occupy my time. So when you look at something, what do you think about failure?
Oh,
Or how do you assess it? What happened?
So one of the biggest things about being a C is we hate being wrong, right? Which is why we collect so much information, because since we're fact based,
Mhm.
I can rely on those facts. No way, I'm right. These facts point that out. So where that is limiting is the fact that C's are going to be slower to start, right? Because they need to collect a certain amount of information before they'll take that first step, before they'll take that first sales call. They need enough information. And Jeff and I, whenever I started, because we were not developers, we were just sales guys. We had a team of developers, and so his constant lecture to me was like, we don't have time for you to go figure out how to be a WordPress developer, because that's what we did, was like WordPress websites, because I wanted to know just a little bit more, right? Like hey Jeff, like I'm not gonna call today, I'm gonna do this, learn a little bit more about like how this stuff works.
It's
No,
like get
make
on
the
the
calls.
ground.
Exactly. But along with that is I hate being wrong, and little bitty things that I take that other people would take as being just wrong, I take as failure, right? If I'm playing poker and I make a bluff and get called, my instinct is like, man, I screwed that up so bad. When in actuality, he probably folds 3 out of 4 times. I just ran into the top end of his range whenever he actually had it, right? But I take that as a failure. I get red in the face, I get mad at myself, and I got to get up and take a lap. Martial arts is the same thing. If I can't get a technique within like the first 3, I'm furious. I'm real mad, which makes it worse. But like that's just how I operate. So failure is like a very real thing to me, probably more real than like anybody else here at this table, because little bitty things show up as huge failures for me.
What is so when you get back into those stressful situations, martial arts or sales processes or just daily life, when you get back into those really stressful shit, I gotta stop and pause. What's your natural inclination? How do you process that? What do you do?
So when I'm in your dish, martial arts wise, right? And I got you back on your heels.
It's never happened.
I know, hypothetically speaking,
He
what
even
goes through
said
your
that.
mind, right? When I'm right up there on you.
You know, what's really interesting, and I don't know if this is for everybody who's a C or just me, is I don't have any ego about being right. Right? For as much as I love being right,
Guys,
I don't
did you
have
guys
any
hear
attachment
that?
to
Seriously, that's prophetic.
It is.
Seriously,
because
everybody listening,
no way.
no ego about being right. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Because if you are better than me, I just want to know it. How'd you get there? Right? I don't
Right on.
I don't have to do the whole thing of like, man, fuck this guy.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's
That's
no
crazy to me.
there's no challenge to
I
me if you're
love
better
it.
than me.
It is
I
crazy.
love that though, man.
I'm
Dude.
willing to
yeah.
like sit at your feet and figure out like what you're doing that makes you different, because I love those little bitty differences.
Can I stop you for a second?
Sure.
As you slide to knowing a D,
No.
that's sliding to knowing as a C, right? Dude, that is. I
And
hope
you're
people are
more-
hearing this.
And so what I hear is I agree with that. You two
Well,
can't
because it's
even go
facts.
there.
No,
it's
I
facts.
do.
It's
I
facts
do.
just in another form.
I
so,
do.
So there's a big difference here, Nat. Sorry. It's hard. We're gonna make this.
It's hard. It's hard for sure.
So I will say that the people side of Doc and yourself, that makes a little bit of sense.
It does.
Yeah,
complete sense to me.
It doesn't make any sense to me. It does. I mean, I always want to be the professional in the room. I always want to be the best, and that's really hard because one of the negative sides of me is that I can't take a lot of help. I can't understand that you're trying to teach me as a teacher. I disagree.
I think he's totally like that.
No, because but think about,
he'll take feedback.
Yeah.
But I'm always looking for feedback, right? Even in situations where I feel like I've got a really good grasp and I've put in my 10,000 hours and I know what the hell I'm talking about. If someone gives me a weird look, I'm like, okay, what did I just say? What did I just do?
Yep.
Like what's making you give me that look? And do you have a difference of opinion?
Yeah, I would say you're really good at reading tonalities, body language. I've seen you do that many times.
Intuitive.
That's the hardest thing for me is thinking about tone and cadence.
For you to do, but not to read. Two different things. Because I watch you do it every day, man. I think you're pretty damn good at it.
It's just habit and practice.
Okay.
Right? Because it's not my natural state.
Okay.
Right?
But I agree with Clint. You do it very well.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. I put probably more emphasis on tone and cadence and like body language than I think most other people do. And a lot of that comes from
your own or other people?
Both.
Okay.
I had a terrible stutter forever from kindergarten until 8th grade.
You still do.
I stutter occasionally.
Do you?
No,
I've
never heard it.
No, I do. If I'm stressed out, I'll stutter a little bit.
I've never heard it.
And there are certain words that are triggers for me. Anything that starts with a how or an H in the front, I have to really make sure that
Have you
how's your day going? Let's talk about that, right? Working at Chase, I'm supposed to greet every customer who comes in, and I would feel pressure, and someone would come in, and I would just not be able to get an H sound out of my mouth.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Super crazy. I've been hypnotized for it. It's been a lifelong issue. So this idea that I'm a salesperson, I have to communicate all day, every day with clients and prospects is kind of astounding to people who knew me as a kid.
So you don't put the H before the W?
Well, it's the sound, right? I'm fine with W's. H's are a struggle for me.
That's interesting. I've never heard that out of you at all.
I worked my ass off for it to be not a thing. Because, man, you want to talk about getting ridiculed and made fun of. I mean, I'm still growing into these ears. You can't see them under the headphones if you're watching the camera. But, the teeth and the stutter and, kind of large lips, man, I was ridiculed. I didn't need one more thing that I could improve
Everyone has something to be ridiculed.
Absolutely.
That's really interesting.
I promise.
Because we would all handle that situation very differently. You did it in an analytical way that you said, okay, I have an issue.
What's the easiest thing to fix?
Yeah. Here's what I'm going to fix. Whereas I would be like, fuck this, I'm out. I'll go find something else that I'm good at with a stutter. Doc could play it off like, dude, I got a stutter. I'm cool as shit with the stutter.
I would go home and cry every night, though, after that.
You would.
Right?
You would.
I would. I'd just cry myself to sleep.
But Nanette would be like, everybody's different. Everybody's got a flaw. Everybody loves me.
And
it's all
anyone
good.
that doesn't believe that is being silly. That's
Which is... So did you cortically override that? I mean,
no, actually,
or did you have a limbic emotion that helped you?
In 8th grade at the school I was at, we got a brand new speech pathologist, brand new out of school, and just had the newest stuff. New, because up until that point it was slow down, talk slower. That's not my problem, because really my stuttering is worse when I'm trying to talk slow.
You think about it.
Exactly. But what she actually came with was like process, right? There's this whole thing. If you've been in speech therapy and you have a stutter, it's prolonging the first syllable. How's it going today? And there's no struggle there whatsoever. So what she really gave me was just a process to work past this thing that I hated and had a big struggle with.
Well, isn't that interesting that everything
is process oriented?
Yeah,
it's super weird, right?
Yeah. Everything that you're failing.
Martial arts and poker and bicycling, everything.
Shooting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a process for sure.
Everything has a process. The number one rule in this whole game, folks, if you're listening, is process is key.
I said that last session, but go ahead. Go
well,
ahead. Rip me off, D. Clint, it's your idea. Go ahead, run with that.
But he had to
Seriously,
capture it.
Get a
it
wheelbarrow,
was important for the eye
load
to
it up,
capture.
run it down the road.
I forgot everything you said. Sorry.
Get fucked over in this whole equation.
I thought that was my idea.
He wants
Of course it is. Clint, thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you for that. Guys, listen to last
episode. Well, I think I told him that in a pre-meeting.
I've got this pulled up from my disc profile as some of my motivators, which is really awesome, right?
Thank you for reining us back in.
Of course, that's what I'm here for.
Thank you.
instructions before starting a task. Don't just say a loose, oh, go figure this out. No, that I'm just gonna ask you a bunch of questions until I have enough information.
Do you need to know the why?
Yeah, I absolutely need to know the why, right? Which is why I was not cut out to be a long-term soldier.
There you go. Yeah, because that's hidden.
Yeah, I did.
Big picture is gone.
I did.
Unless you're in the big picture.
Right. I was in the reserves, right? I joined as a reservist. And then as soon as they said, you want to go inactive? I said, absolutely. And because there was no communication, right? I mean, part of it was bad leadership and part of it was me just being incessantly curious and skeptical.
That's interesting. I didn't need any of that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Blow the wall down. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Go take that area.
Yeah.
How do you want me to do that? Just go figure it out. I have some more questions.
Oh shit, that works so well for me.
No, that's not how I operate. Let's see. Detailed instructions, right? Kind of goes along with the first thing. Freedom to do my own work without being disturbed, right? Which is
that's hugely important for you guys.
That's a huge thing for me. Right? And working at home is.
So how about the bowel movement that gets in your way? What do you do with that?
I'm learning at the same time, right? I'll
Distraction.
I'll watch webinars.
That's what laptops are
no,
for.
No, that's when you're like, like that little kid.
Delete,
distraction.
I'll literally watch webinars to like try to improve. Like, well, you know.
Okay, we'll move on.
If this was the mid '90s, he had 300-foot extension cords to take his computer into the bathroom.
He's got the phone that you're talking to your girlfriend on. This, your parents don't hear. You're like dragging it.
Thank
into
God
your room.
for laptops.
Opportunities to increase my knowledge, absolutely. I mean, I'm a huge refinement guy. I'm always looking for that. Realistic goals, not aggressive environment and job, which is kind of interesting. I don't really know that that's true. Some things that reduce my motivation, having to decide alone. I'm very big about, let me go ask this guy who's done it before.
Oh, you like confirmation.
Let me go read reviews.
Let me ask you this, because it's strange, because I know we ask you a lot about, John, does this make sense, right?
Absolutely.
So when you say that, we're asking you to tell us.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you square that?
Because I've already been down the path, and most of the stuff that we're talking about as far as, you know, marketing and promoting this joint venture that we're on right now, right? I've spent a lot of time in that realm. So if you ask me something that I wasn't familiar with, I'll go figure it out. Mm-hmm. I mean, you might be waiting 3 weeks, whereas like Clint's going to give you an hour in a day, or a decision in an hour or less.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go research. I'm going to go open 7 tabs. I'm going to go read 17 blog posts, sign up for webinars and all this other stuff. But like that's just what I do.
Does that get in the way of making money?
Gets in the way of progress.
Well, sometimes. You say that. I'm asking him, though.
Okay.
If that hurts a little bit, shut the fuck up. Let your boyfriend speak for himself.
Can we define a D any better?
Does it get in the way of progress?
Quiet, please.
Yeah, at times.
Okay.
Right? Because if I was Clint, I would just jump without looking. Yeah, we're going to do this, right?
But I'm not talking about Clint. I'm talking about you.
No, I know, but like it's the difference though, right? Because I need to think about it. You know, I need to work through my questions. I need to go talk to other people who know.
Okay.
And you know, prime example of this is whenever we started the website design company, we didn't offer hosting to people. We didn't want to do it, and then people kept asking for it, and then finally Jeff comes in one day and he was like, "We're going to offer hosting," and I was like, "Oh, okay." And all of a sudden I've got 17 questions queued up in my head that I'm going to ask him. And he goes, "You have a lot of questions." By now we'd been working together for a while. We kind of knew how the other person operated. He goes, "This is not a fully formed idea. You have a ton of questions. Go write them all down and we'll work through them tomorrow." And I was like, awesome. Right? It was super helpful.
He didn't just discount it.
Yeah, he didn't. Yeah. He didn't just discount
he qualified it with,
which would have been easy to do for an eye. You hear that tall boy crack right over there?
I heard a beer opening somewhere. Right? Not sure what brand it is, but
hold
on. If anybody wants to support, we'll take the sponsorship. So
it might have been a sparkling water.
It might have been, but it wasn't.
Fuck that. They don't have the money beer companies do. Give me a major brand.
Look, I was going to announce it, but you told me to shut the fuck up. So
sorry.
But that incessant need to know will keep me from making a decision just moving forward, right? Which is why one of my favorite things is perfect is the enemy of good. I'm always looking for perfect. Always.
Okay.
Always.
So how do you balance that out to move forward?
It's this, right? It's knowing that I will I will sit in a room and ask questions and read, as opposed to starting and knowing that doesn't pay my bills and that doesn't get me to where I want to be in my business.
So your motivation to move is move forward, meaning on a project.
Excellent.
How do you get outside of the analytics and get into the action step?
That's a good question. I think it's just knowing that I got to pay bills.
Okay.
Right. Knowing that every day I wake up and I'm behind. Right. And that I got to go out. Right. Because, if you take all your bills, divide them by 365, right. When you wake up in the morning, you're behind the ball.
The analysis of the debt owed, right?
For sure.
Or the project ahead, right? Meaning here's what we got to do.
Rent and bills and, partners and, some staff now, and that'll grow. So I got to pay all of that. And that doesn't get paid if I just sit and ponder and try to get to perfect. I got to make a decision and be okay with the fact that I'm going to be wrong sometimes. It's not comfortable, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes. It's muscle memory at a certain point.
So
Clint does not believe me or something.
No,
I know. Look on his face is
well, it's different from the way we view things,
sure,
right? Because
no,
I know what makes me chase. I know what makes me get off my ass.
It sounded like y'all are a couple.
No, I know what he meant. He, as a business owner, there's a big different responsibility. Even as a single person, you worry about yourself versus when you get married, you have kids. There's a lot of responsibilities. You have a ton of responsibility. And the way you define that is, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to make this a daily fact that I have to succeed at. And I'm going to try to produce something that gets me there daily.
For sure.
Which is interesting because
but man, it gets so analytical. Like there's 7 more layers to that.
I know.
I was just say that's the surface.
That's
right?
the surface.
Because that leads to
and the funny thing is that's 9 more layers than I have.
For sure.
Period.
Well,
and that's
100%. Yeah.
Because here's the deal.
This is where me and Doc Al will actually agree on this.
Yeah, completely agree.
That monthly amount that I need to get up and make over the course of the month is then factored into the behaviors that I do each and every week, right? And measuring the front end of that and not just the lagging indicators of how much money's in the bank, because that doesn't help me.
Because here's the crazy part. I don't even know what it takes.
To what?
To pay my bills.
Perseverance.
Don't have a fucking clue.
Really?
Don't know the dollar amount.
Couldn't tell you either.
Oh my god!
No
the only single girl on the panel is perseverance. Just do it every day.
I couldn't tell you within thousands,
right? So
thousands of dollars. Couldn't tell you.
My
the
weeks
only
are
single
planned.
girl.
I look at my bank account and I'm shocked either about how much I have or how much I don't have.
I'm told you can buy lunch or you can't.
Yeah.
That's it.
Agreed.
Cool.
I look down and I go, it's either peanut butter or filet mignon.
I love peanut butter.
No,
and I like them both too, right? I'm good with either or. I don't know till I know.
Before working
it's
with
about
Jeff,
every 3 months I look at my bank account.
Before working with Jeff and learning about KPIs and leading indicators and how
what's KPIs?
Key predictive indicators, right? So
why is that important?
So these are the things you look at because you know that they lead to sales, right? I can't control how many people say yes, but I can control how many people I ask. So if I know that I close 1 in 10, if I want to close another one, I need to go talk to 10 more people. That's how I run my life. And when I learned that, and I can remember specifically having that conversation and sitting down and just being blown away that there was a different way to do it. Because before that, I was just caught in this paradigm of more. I need more reps. I need more. And I was kind of still working with Al, and I needed more doctors, right? I needed more hours in the day. I needed all this stuff. And it wasn't until I went to work with Jeff and we sat down and figured out what my weekly behaviors needed to look like as far as the count, how many meetings, right? How many decision maker conversations did I need to have per week, and what behaviors that I needed to do each week to get to that count. And then I can remember it clear as day. It was Wednesday afternoon and I'd finished all my behaviors for the week. I was just ahead of the game. And he's like, "You taking a break?" I said, "No, I'm kind of done." He's like, what do you mean you're done?" I was like, "I've done all my KPIs for the week." He's like, "Cool, let's go get a beer." I was like, well, "Wait a minute, I'm not done." He was like, "Man, we got to trust in the process," which is a huge jujitsu thing, right? You trust in the process and you'll make improvements. And he said that to me, and it shifted instantly. I didn't feel this pressure of okay, let's keep the scramble going. I did what I needed to do. We trust in the process and we'll adjust it as time goes on. Now I can turn it off and work on other stuff, right? Big picture stuff and not just sales transactional stuff.
Which is so different because I usually just reach into my front pocket, I pull out the debit card and I go, let's see if it works.
Yeah. I'm with him.
It's a process.
And if it pays the bill, if not, you're gonna have to perform.
Yeah.
Right. So we can buy the drinks.
I'm with you.
So yeah, that in that moment is when everything changed for me, because up until that point, I had this rep in all my friend circles that I was the guy in sales, and I was always closing, and I was always kind of prospecting. Like when I was at the bank, it's like, hey, who do you bank with? When I was in cell phones, it's like, what kind of phone do you have? And I thought I needed to do that to be successful. Trying to pitch to everybody. And it wasn't until that moment that I was like, oh shit, I don't have to be this annoying person and trying to sell to all my friends and my family.
But I don't think I've
Very
never
good.
seen you annoying.
That's very good.
Well,
appreciate
that's a
No, I mean that sincerely. You say that about yourself, but I
Well,
think
the
that's
perception of the
maybe that's your
individual.
personal perception.
Right.
But
Sure.
I think you have a way of delivering what you do and who you are that's very comforting. I mean, it's easy.
So
for,
of all the C's I know, it's very kind.
But there's a ton of hard work put in there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just
for
to get
sure.
where you
Yeah.
are.
Knowledge.
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 I mean, I think that Al and Nanette would agree with me that I'm a drastically different person now than I was whenever I worked with them.
I think you're probably the hardest personality in my book to drag out of your natural state.
For sure, because we don't get emotional, and we don't really care about people.
Yeah,
right?
you're in a weird corner, man,
I think
because
you totally care about.
I do, right?
Yeah.
Because here, okay.
is that a personal crusade?
No,
wait
wait
second.
a minute.
All right,
Hold on.
Lord and Savior
No,
over there.
that's not it.
Quit
Because
talking, Daniel.
there are some people that I don't care about, right? And there are things where I struggle, right? Small talk is a big one, right? We got to build some bonding and rapport with people, like whenever we're first trying to start a
fuck.
relationship.
That's the worst.
And that's your sweet spot. Like that's where you two guys hang out, right? And you love it. Nan loves it as well, but man, I hate it, right? And so I have to turn, in most of my networking, if I'm just having a kind of like a, hey, I don't know you, you don't know me, but we met, like let's chat about business. My first 20 minutes is not about anything other than like, what do you do outside of work? Because if we can't get on the same page, and this is so ridiculous, if you don't have a passion in your life that makes you seek to get better, I have a hard time
Connecting.
with
Yeah,
you.
me too.
That's 90% of the freaking world, Chief.
I
What
know.
are you
Yeah,
doing?
but
I know.
this
and I'm talking to
C-
everybody out there.
No, the
Seriously,
C and
guys.
the S don't even want to. We're like,
Right, because I've got
irritating.
5 things that I'm working on at like any
Yeah.
given point, right? My business, martial arts, I'm a bicyclist, I play poker.
Okay, but here's my good for you.
Sure, no,
Right.
absolutely.
My
Your
my
point
point
being-
is
your
that a
point?
lot of times we go out to people and they don't. They have nothing.
Oh yeah, it's a struggle,
It is a struggle.
right? But
but you
man,
don't have to choose everybody. You just choose the people you choose.
good point,
Good point. Yeah.
right? Because
So you're
I,
acting like everyone you have to choose. No.
and
if
it's
you're-
really only been super recently that I'm okay with the idea of people not liking me, right?
Yeah, isn't that
Not-
great?
That's
great.
Like,
But do you
like
care?
No,
man, it's really interesting because
I'm an S and I don't care.
on some points, I take you or someone not liking me as failure, right? Or being wrong.
Wow.
That's interesting.
It's super, I mean, and as I get older, right, I'm almost 40, I care less and less about that, right? 40 is getting older. I'm not
Baby.
saying I'm old. I'm saying I'm getting older, right? I'm 40
He's
years
my
old.
grandson.
But it's an ongoing struggle,
Yeah.
right? Because I got to build rapport with people, and if you don't have something that makes you want to get better, then I have a hard time relating to you, and I kind of don't care.
Okay, so let's take that rapport, put it in a process. Does that make it easier?
Absolutely, because all I'm doing now in my bonding and rapport is trying to figure out where you are on this scale that we're talking about
okay.
here.
So that's a really good point to the viewers and the
So
listeners.
you're a good faker, is what you're saying.
Well,
But it's
yeah,
it's
essentially.
okay. But it's an essential step in your process that you have to do. You know that
Absolutely.
you have to do that.
Yeah.
So if you make it a have to do in a process, and you make it, say analytical again,
Mhm.
if you make it in that process where it's a step that I can't go to step 2 without step 1, that's a lot easier for you to deal with as
Oh,
a C.
I love that.
So
Give
if
me
you-
all the silver bullets. That's all for everything.
So if you're a C out there listening and you're struggling with a step like that, realize that it's essential to your
Yeah.
process.
turn it into a task.
Yeah. there
Right?
you go.
Because before I realized all I really need to do is figure out how you listen and how you communicate and how you visualize things and how you want to get information. I would struggle with it. Like, hey, what'd you do last weekend? I don't care what you did last weekend, right?
Well, don't ever ask anyone that again.
Well, I know.
I'd be like,
it doesn't really make any sense, but in the website company, I did a lot of networking, right? Which is like a lot of coffees, and you meet people, and you got to get them out, and then try to get into their referral kind of network and stuff like that. And I would have all these conversations with people, and I'm just like dreading it. Like, oh Jesus, why am I here? This is brutal. And then,
whoa.
I'm not really sure when it changed.
And coffee doesn't get you drunk. It just gets you more excited about not liking them, right?
It's just crazy, yeah. Right? And
then I'm all amped up. I want to reach across and rip your throat out now, right?
I mean, it's nothing aggressive.
It's not.
It's not aggressive. It's just
caffeine doesn't like amp you up a little bit.
My constant thing is like, is this worth my time?
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And
makes sense.
my partner Melissa and I argue all the time because I don't mow my own yard. And in her opinion, being a homeowner, I should mow that yard. And I'm like, this is nonsense. My time is better spent resting on a Saturday to make sure that I can be on my A game Monday through Friday. And I don't get to do that if I'm mowing my yard.
On Saturday, 36 hours from Monday.
Damn right.
I got to lay on the couch, babe.
Damn right. Damn right.
That's more like me. Because I'm like, but here's the deal. I don't even justify it. I'm like, I'm laying down. So what? Hate me if you will.
Right? I learned a lot of like my current money concept from you about like whenever we work together because you.
That was a mistake.
No,
you should.
Best advice he ever got.
You should have talked to his accountant.
Al
should have talked to Nan.
Al will spend money to make money, right? And if there's ROI there, he's game on for it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until Al and I worked together that some of my monetary concept shifted, and it shifted again with even more so working with Jeff. But before that, I was poor as a kid, like very, very, very poor. So, I always had shoes. I'm not trying to make it out to be like we were, poverty level, but.
And I can verify what he's saying and go ahead with what you're saying.
And so I come from a very fixed mindset, right? Which is part of this idea why I thought that personal development was woo-woo bullshit, right? And if you talk to a lot of C's, they're going to feel the same way that I am because it's harder to get us emotional about improvement because I don't need you to tell me how to improve. I'm going to go find my own way. And that guy's going to be right because I vetted him. So until you get to that point to where you realize that like, hey, someone else could have it better than you, because I don't necessarily know that every C sees someone else and goes looking for them as a way to improve themselves. I think that I might be kind of an outlier in that area.
Yeah, I agree. I think as we kind of wind down here on the C personality spectrum, I'd like to get some of your hot topics, Doc, Nanette, myself. How do you recognize a C? What are the
the glasses and the
pocket protector,
the pins, right? Yeah, I mean
there's no other personality that's going to wear that.
Yeah.
So for me, I always hear details. They need to know specific
questions. Yeah. Tons of questions.
Right.
Tons of questions.
They want details, facts. They're not just like, hey, how's the weather? They want to know. They want to know real things.
I'm kind of a hard person to be friends with, if I'm being really honest.
Oh, I don't think so.
Because you can't come to me
with...
I
agree 100%.
Of course you do.
I love John.
You can't come to me with like an idea that's half-baked and expect me to be like, oh, okay, like my sister, who she's a great person. I'm glad she's my sister. She's not a C. So she comes to me with these plans and I'm like, okay, how are you going to make that happen? Oh, I'm not sure yet. Are you concerned? No, not really. What happens if it didn't go well? I haven't thought that far ahead. And then I get frustrated and she gets frustrated. And then
what is she?
My sister is probably just a huge S. Yeah, she's a huge S.
So hopes and dreams all the time.
Hopes and dreams and love, and I don't really want conflict and things like that.
Sunshines. Yeah, so I would say that as this world kind of turns towards a corporate structure, we talked about this a little bit earlier. You may be dealing with a decision maker out there who may be a D, an IS, or a C, but most of the time, at least in my profession, there's always a C behind the doors.
Oh,
there's always a
Don't look
C,
at the man behind the curtain.
Right. There's always a C that tells somebody you can or you can't do something financially.
Mm-hmm.
And in that regard, there's a lot of times that I'm not selling to the guy that I think's the decision maker because truly he's not. Right? It's the C behind closed doors telling him that, hey, look, guy, you can say all you want, but you don't have the finances for this to make that decision. You can't do this on a job. That change order is not approved, blah, blah, blah. And that's not coming from that guy's brain. That's coming from data produced behind himself.
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes I find myself dealing at the end of the day, negotiations with a high C who hasn't been a part of the process for 6-7 months negotiations. And now all of a sudden I'm sitting in front of this guy in a conference room telling me that my price is too high and here's why. So it's really interesting that I think out there that a high C is more involved than we would all like to think. I think they're involved in almost every decision-making process somewhere down the road.
Your CFO is pretty much always going to be
always
a high C. Probably also your CTO. You know, if you're selling to the C-suite.
Probably a CS or an SC, maybe a D
or a CD.
Right? Yeah, or a CD, because he's in a C-level position. That may push him up there as a D. So when I'm talking to a C and I recognize it, it's always based on the questioning. Right, so I say something offhanded, and a C will always question it. Always, he'll say, "Oh, geez, how'd you come to that conclusion? How did you make that statement? What facts do you have to back that up?" That's off-putting for me, because I said it, so it must be true. That's a D, right? And I get this. I kind of get some pushback. What I would say is when you recognize that trait in somebody, especially if you're a D, take that with a grain of salt, because they're asking a lot of good questions that you may not know the answers to, and that's okay. Check that ego, go back, find the facts out, and you can always kind of see a C when he says, "I don't know, I'll get back to you." Mm-hmm. That's one of the greatest statements that I've ever learned in the sales process ever. I don't know the answer to that question right now. Maybe in a day I'll get back to you when I go research it. It's a lot of people look at that as a get out of jail free card. But if you truly mean what you're saying, you're really going to go dig into it. C's always do that to you.
Yeah.
That's one of the only personality traits on this block that will do that. Right?
Mm-hmm. True.
Because an I will fake the funk. A D will tell you exactly, no, I'm right, you're wrong. And he'll hold his line in the sand. And S will be like, shit, I don't know. Everybody's right. Everybody's wrong.
Never say shit.
So one of the things that if you're selling to a C is you have to understand the fact that they've got their own process, right? And they're not winging it, right? Like when I make a purchase, I think of myself as a pretty easy sell, right? Because I've already come into the thing informed, right? So like when I go into Best Buy, REI or something like I already know what I'm going to buy, right? So when like, hey, do you need help? No, I'll find it. I know exactly what I'm looking for. And then the polar opposite of that is whenever I'm just initially shopping, I will go waste everybody's time. Yeah. Sure. I'm the worst about it. Which one do you like? Yeah. Why do you like that one? How long have you guys had it? And all this other stuff. Because I'm fact finding and data collecting. Now, if you try to put pressure on me to like close me right there, you're going to blow it up, and I'm going to tell you exactly what you want to hear, and then I'm going to leave and never call you again.
That's why you're always on speed dial. Hey, John. What phone are you researching lately?
I was about to say the same thing.
I get the oddest requests because people just expect me to know everything. And what's weird is I normally have an opinion, right? It's not always.
Last year you bought a hoodie that took you 6 months to research.
Yeah, that's my favorite example about like how C's buy, right? So I was gonna go buy a hoodie, and
like hands up, don't shoot Trayvon hoodie, or
we have 4 minutes and we're talking about the hoodie.
A hooded sweatshirt, right? And I had 7 tabs open from like different manufacturers like Carhartt and all these other things for weights.
Can you say Carhartt?
So
of course,
hold on. So
let's back. Me at Carhartt.
I mean, and we don't have a bunch of time here.
I love Carhartt.
Because I want to make the best decision
about a hoodie,
about everything: cars, hoodies, shoes, bicycles.
Hoodie you only wear on Saturday mornings after coffee.
Huh? What's that?
You only wear a hoodie after coffee on Saturday morning.
Why don't you just buy 6 hoodies and see which one fits? Take the rest back.
That's a bad decision. It's a bad process. Can't do it. I don't work that way. I'm gonna do my research, right? And I'm researching stuff like how long is the warranty, right? How quickly do I
get
a hoodie?
Do I go? Oh, you laugh, but one of the ones that I almost bought.
I do laugh. You're correct.
There's
I'm laughing.
one that I almost bought. It's called the 10-year hoodie. You can look it up. They have a 10-year warranty on it. So any rips, scratches, or anything else, I do.
Oh,
if I'm gonna pay $100 for a hoodie, it better well last 10 years.
Can I stop for you a second?
Of course.
So on condoms, how do you view that?
Bearskin.
There are things that are not part of the process.
Okay, just being honest. Right, just checking.
If you're gonna analyze anything, I think it would be a condom. Thank you.
There is a threshold where
condom hoodie, right?
There's a threshold
prolonged reasons
to where
it
doesn't make sense to do the research. right? Like it's just like, oh, okay, cool, right? And with something like condoms, like the brands that I'm never gonna gamble on the unknown.
Is
name.
a hoodie gonna keep you from an STD?
You're not gonna go with Jeff's condoms.
No, like I'm gonna get the Trojan, right? And
another
plug it.
Hold on,
there we
another
go
sponsor coming down our way.
We'll take it by the boxes.
It, baby.
Yeah.
Then we'll use them.
There is that threshold, but cars, like gas mileage and maintenance cost and cost of ownership and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
that wins over a hoodie, no doubt.
But so to go back to kind of wrapping this thing up, if you're C, right, you have to understand that prospects buy for their reasons, not your reasons, right? True. I used to get furious when I was a banker and was selling investments, right? Because this was in 2010. I have a baby face now. I had a really baby face then. Had a guy tell me that he had socks older than me.
80 years old.
That's right. I'm a vampire. I'm Paul
Benjamin
Rudd.
Button.
And so this is in 2011, right? So the market is gone. Everything is crap, right? You can't get any kind of return in a banking product. So I could sell investments. So we had some products that were generating, 2% versus, 0.0003%. And people wouldn't want to jump through the hoops. And I would get so mad. It's like, I can make you more money in this thing that is as secure as the thing that you're in, but they didn't see value in that, right? So they buy for their own reasons. So don't get caught up in the logic, right? Take the time to understand what's driving them to make a buying decision and reference that throughout your conversations. Like that's the biggest point of improvement I can offer to a C, is just understand that it's not about
self-awareness, right?
Yeah.
That we're talking about, that we're trying to push forward to everybody out there, is that we all sit here entrenched in who we are, right? And you're well aware of who you are.
Yeah.
You just know where you need to slide and what you need to be aware of when you deal with the rest of us, right?
Absolutely. Right. Like my conversations with the three of you when we're on one-on-one are drastically different, right? Because
well, you and I do tongue, right?
But the bottom line is, hoodie is another name for a condom.
I gotta let Al run with his stories, right? And I can't show up with too many details. Like, is this being taken care of? Yes, it is.
Let's just be quiet about that.
And to end this, D, would you have anything you'd like to share with us?
I got all kinds of shit.
You have 30 seconds to tell us.
We can go long on the C episode.
Look,
it makes sense for it to be
I got all the time I want.
Help me.
This
Ownership.
is my world. You're living in it.
All right, so let's be consistent real quick and make sure we cover two
things.
Thank
you, C.
that are super important. All right, so if you're C selling to other people, just understand that it's not about you. It's about them and what they see value in. Take time to figure that out, because it might not be anything in your arsenal of things you're prepared to talk about. One instance, I'm selling a cell phone case to a woman, and I was like, do you want the OtterBox? Do you want this? Do you want this? And everything else. All she wanted was a red one.
Yeah.
It's all she wanted, right? So I spent 45 minutes trying to sell her on the various features and benefits, like barely there, lots of protection, everything else. And she's like, can I get it in red? Yeah, absolutely. I've got 17 red ones. Which one do you want? But it wasn't until that moment that we had that point that she was willing to listen.
Want?
Absolutely. Why is this important? What are you looking for? What do you see as valuable? Let's talk about those things. The other side is that if you're in consulting, which is kind of the broader label for what I do, is just understand that no one starts the day thinking about hiring a consultant to come in and tell them how to make their business more efficient. So you got to be patient and play the long game, right?
And one of the things I would say about especially a high C is that don't stop asking questions. That's your biggest strong point. That's your biggest strong. Just make sure that you're asking the right ones for the right reason, right? What are you really digging for? If you're just digging for your own knowledge, that may not always work in a sales situation. But if you're asking questions to get through your process and also their needs, then it's really important. Don't lose that trait. I don't think anybody up here is telling you to do that as a high C. Once again, we always talk about biggest strength, biggest weakness, same thing. Questioning. That's your, I mean, you can wear me out with some questions, man, and I will blow you off so fast because I'm just tired of answering stupid ass questions. But if they hold value, and you're asking, especially to me, if you're asking for a reason, I'm all in, and it makes me interested. So.
And that's part of that awareness, right? Because I will get into those details, and it's such an intellectual conversation that it limits my ability to sell, right? Because one of the things we all know is that you got to get someone emotional, right? Buying is an emotional process, right? And we can qualify that just by looking at the cars that everyone drives. No one needs a Lexus. Yeah. But if everyone was just buying the thing that got them from A to B, we'd all have Corollas or Kias or something like that. But cars are a huge emotional thing. And I have a hard time keeping people emotional because I want to talk about the details and the ROI and why is this important.
What if you ask emotional questions?
For sure, right? And that's part of my refinement loop is how can I take this very analytical question, strip it out to an emotional question that actually moves the conversation forward.
Yeah. But it has to be there for a reason.
Yeah.
And you have to have that in your process. Anybody else got anything for John as a C?
I just want to say, anybody that heard their label mentioned tonight, we appreciate your sponsorship. We're looking for you guys to call us, and we'll say your name a bunch more times.
For sure. This is awesome. I was pretty nervous about this episode, honestly, because I like.
Dude, I knew you were gonna nail it.
Yeah.
You are more prepared than any of us up here in a very cool way. Dude, when I saw you walk in, I knew it was going to be a good show.
Yeah, we all showed up half lit for ours. No notes.
Not me. I would never do that.
Awesome. So,
dude, you're delicious today. So yeah, well done.
So
awesome. So we'll be back next week.
Yeah, that kind of rounds out the disc. We've kind of went through us as people.
Week.
Next week we're diving into various sales topics. Right?
I was going to say, going forward, you kind of know if you've listened to all the episodes, you're going to understand a little bit about each one of us. And from here, we talk about the real day in, day out going forward. And we're going to start fielding questions. We're going to be bringing real life examples of, serious shit that everybody faces when you're trying to make a living in the sales arena.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
That's right. So go follow us on all social media. Everything is at Sales Throwdown. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're going to have some sweet merch pretty soon up on the website. That's going to be exciting. So if you want a cup or a shirt,
John's on you.
But we want to give you the tools. Seriously, guys. I mean, when we look forward, we're looking to give you the tools that you need to go slay it, to make the money that you want to make, to solve the problems that you want to solve, to bring your success to the next level.
Yeah, you're gonna. I think you said this, Al. Whenever we were first planning this, is hopefully you find yourself in one of us, right? You might relate to Nanette versus Clint, right? And so then, in 7 episodes, when we're talking about how to ask for referrals, right? The way that Nanette is going to talk about it is going to make way more sense than the way I talk about it, or the way Clint talks about it, because that's not going to make any sense to you, right? So it's appreciation for.
It'll make sense to somebody.
Absolutely. But let's be honest, right? Like those D's are not coachable usually.
So next week.
Yeah. So follow us on social media. Subscribe on the YouTube channel.
Next week is our first sponsor. I will be wearing a T-shirt. It's called 19 Machine with the hottest singer on God's earth.
Oh, we do know a good band. Yeah, absolutely.
Paul,
check us out.
Paul's our sound guy.
19 Machine.
Paul is our sound guy. He has a band. It was apparently a really good show that I missed out on.
Rocks it like nobody. Seriously.
Awesome.
He's responsible for the stage. If you're watching us, the glorious audio coming through your speakers.
19 Machine, if anyone didn't hear.
Likes to lick the microphone, take his shirt off. Pretty impressive.
Whatever works. We'll see everybody next week. Y'all have a good week. Go sell something.
John, thank you, man.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well done.